Welcome to ManIFF 2015's Inside the Filmmakers studio. Our guest this afternoon is an avant-garde film director from Italy with his roots in the stage. Emiliano Galigani founded Metropolis Produzioni in 2001. The international production company based in Tuscany have produced many plays and shows around the world, including the Wall Live Orchestra, Jesus Christ Superstar, and Welcome to the Machine. The established theatre productions drove the organisation onto the screen with titles like Homewards, When We Were Friends, and ManIFF's world premiere, The Imago. Emiliano's latest project, The Carriers, is currently in pre-production. Adding to all this natural passion for creativity, Metropolis also founded the Cartasia Art Festival, which is in its 14th biennial year, and Tuscany's Film Lab. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce a truly great 21st century artist, Emilio Galigani.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, Emilio, we'll start easy. Where were you born?
I was born in right at the center of Italy. It's a little town called Terni, which is right in the middle of Italy. But really, I lived there just 3 or 4 months of my life. And then I was moved with my family in Africa and Asia.
Oh, wow.
Since my father was a civil engineer.
Ah, cool.
He used to build dams and roads, so I was there like 12 years. I never came back, almost never came back to Italy. So my first time in Italy was when I was 12, actually.
Oh, really? So where did you go to, when you were touring the world? Where is it you went to school then? Did you...
Oh, well, I applied to many schools. When we were, well, the first school I applied was in Iran.
Oh, wow.
In Tehran. And it was an Italian school at that moment. And then we moved to Algeria, and that was a French school. So I have to say that by the time I was 7, I knew much better French than Italian, which now I don't know absolutely. But then then we moved also to some other. Well, I applied to one French school, one English school, and one Italian school. So by the time I was 12, I came back and started my schools in Italy.
Right. And was it at school that your interest in film began?
Where I studied?
Yes.
Yeah. That was in the university. I studied university in architecture in Florence, which is close by where I live. And this happened to be like 2 years after that. I found out that architecture was not exactly my job, and I started. It's an university. It's called the EAMS, which is Department of Art, Music, and Show Business and Show, which is almost where I started to learn about theater and movie. I couldn't decide because I was really in love with both, and I started learning and learning. So I never stopped either one or the other because I had the opportunity to choose both. And so I finished university practically dividing my study 50-50 for theater and university and the cinema. One funny thing is that when I went out from university, I was okay. Now I'm a director. Okay, let's go making movies. And then, all of a sudden, the matter of finding the money came on the road. So I started to do the other job, and I started to do production. Yeah, so that was my first, let's say, meeting with true cinema, because up until then was only theory. And then I started working in a movie that was produced by Bernardo Bertolucci. I had the opportunity to work with great actors like Sir Ben Kingsley and Mira Sorvino.
Yeah.
That was my jump into theater, into cinema. Actually, a big jump.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a big jump. Yeah,
it was it.
So what led you to founding Metropolis, if you don't mind me asking?
Money.
Money.
Very simple. It's a very easy question. I wanted to. I feel I'm like a storyteller. I always felt that passion in storytelling, even before theater and cinema studies. I thought I was always writing like books or novels or early stuff. But then I I had to find a way to tell a story to an audience, and frankly, the budget was too high for me to step into a movie production.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about writing stage plays, because it was cheaper and easier to put up. So let's say the job was a little bit long, because at that time, I'm talking about 2000, 2001, when I founded Metropolis. At that time, I had to raise the money and do the stage play. So it was a little bit tricky, but then I found some great guys that helped me, and we started together. That's how we started Metropolis. We just simply decided to put up a musical about. It's not about Pink Floyd, it's about Syd Barrett.
Right.
But we used the Pink Floyd music, and we set up a musical in 2001, and we toured Italy with that musical for 9 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So, what is it then that when you've got your story on the stage and you want to change that, develop that then into a film? How do you go about that process?
That's interesting, because the way you go from stage to cinema usually is keeping the external scenes into the plot. But that's not completely easy. What I like the most is the fact that the two media, I mean cinema and theater, are so different. But I'd like to play with both, in the sense that when you work in theater, of course, you work mainly with actors and audience. It means that you go and work with when I say you work with actors, you work with the voice of the actors, and most of all, you work with the body of the actors. So, and also theater gives you the possibility to explore meanings on a different level. Everything, I always keep this example. If there's a man on a stage and it's on his knees and he's with his hand on the stage, it could easily be a table. That's not so easy into movies. So the metaphors you can add into theaters and the way you can talk to people are so different in theater than in movies. Whether in movies you have a direct relationship with your audience, is more straight to the person, while the audience in theater is more like, let's say, a mass. You're talking to everybody. This way, the kind of relationship you get with the audience is very different. But what I like the most is the fact that you can mix those kind of relationship, and you can play a little bit with the audience by knowing exactly what is the language that you're using. So it's not just a matter of putting external scenes on a stage play. It's a matter of trying to understand the most the language you are using, and then the expectation of the audience and the reaction of the audience. I wouldn't say you can play with it, but you can. Yeah, it's just I like to say it's just like a chess game. You play with the audience, and you give them expectation, and you try to switch a little bit the expectation, and you try to go further. Also, a very big difference is played by the role of attention. The attention span, is this the word maybe?
Yes.
In theater is completely different than the attention span into the movie. When you're in front of a movie, you expect to know constantly a different word. Every second you project yourself into the story, and you said, okay, this is going to happen. And a good movie is when this projection is not fulfilled. If you know exactly by the beginning what's going to be the end, this is a bad movie.
Yeah.
Okay? In theater, it's completely different. In theater, it's like that. I mean, your projection, but it's even a different set of meanings that comes to you, because the actor can play not only with the sound and with the eye and with the sight. The actor can play with so many things into theater. That means that the whole, let's say, weapons that an actor has and the director has on a stage, it's completely different than the cinema. So that's the whole idea. That keeping a stage play on the cinema is it's of course a challenge, a big challenge, and but it's mainly for me, it's knowing the language and try to play a little bit with that language. And I like to mix both language, and I'm trying to use it into movie.
Well, I think in The Imago you hit a wonderful balance, because when I did watch it, I did feel it was very cinematic at times in the imagery, as I spoke to you earlier. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful, really enjoyable stuff. But it had that stage playiness about it, not in a bad way, but you know, I don't know, there was something of the theatre about it. I think it was the small contained cast, you know. Yeah. Really, really liked it, really enjoyable. Yeah. What is it sort of that will attract you to a story? You know, is there any special criteria you look for?
A good story.
A good story?
No, I'm not. Well, you know, I'm not into. This was a discussion I just had with my producer. I'm not into genre. I don't like genre. I don't like the. I don't even like the term genre. I know the meaning. I know that it's useful, but I don't like it. I simply don't like it. I think that there are good stories and bad stories. There is a story that you feel compelled with, and that's it. And that I don't know what really moves me, but when I found a story, I go for it, and I can, of course, I can spend hours and years following the story and trying to put the story on stage or into movies. I have to. That's the point. I need to tell the story. How I'm telling the story is just a matter of the language. I don't think there are stories for theater or stories for cinema. Of course, if you have to write it, you just have to manage the language. But all stories can fit into both medias. It's only a matter on how you want to tell it and the kind of audience that you want to address to. That is very important. But I don't like the the genre idea. If we talk about great movies like, I don't know, we were talking this morning about, I don't know, Shining. Shining, it's an horror, okay, but it's a thriller. Yeah. But it's a drama. It's a psychological thriller. What it is? Why is not a genre? Maybe you get up on a certain level. I may say, don't get me wrong, but the lowest level, very basic level, when you need a genre to catch a certain kind of audience and address the audience. But if you manage, and that's the challenge, that's the very interesting thing to me. If you manage to go over the genre and catch the audience, you get to the point. Yeah.
No, I think you managed that really well actually in The Imago, because thinking about it beforehand, I was thinking when you said you don't like genre, I was like, well, that's actually, when you think about The Imago, it is something that's difficult to peg. It almost transcends sort of that genre, you know, feel, because it's got very gothic sensibilities, but at times it's actually quite funny and, you know, at times thrilling and scary and all sorts. Is there anything really besides genre then that will put you off adapting a story?
Probably a strong character. Probably a strong character. The idea in Imago was that I started because my wife was studying. She was studying education for kids. And that time she was studying fairy tales, so she was studying Lewis Carroll. Yeah. Then I bumped into the character. She told me about that priest stammering. So I started studying, and that priest was stammering, and at the same time he was capturing the attention of the kids. How can it be? How can a stammering person capture the attention of the kids? Because, by the way, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was first told novel, and then it became a book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the story is that the guy whose name was Charles Ludwig Dodgson, which was born, like, I think 15 kilometers from here.
Yeah.
He was he was a mathematician and a priest, stammering.
Yeah.
And a professor too. And on his spare time, he used to go to the park, and he met that little bunch of girls, and one of those girls was Alice Liddell. And he started to talk to her about this adventure of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and then he finished the telling, and the girl was so in need to have the story, so he wrote the book, and he dedicated the book to Alice, to the real Alice. This was the first start for me, but when I came to the point that I understood that this guy was also one of the major photographer of the Victorian era, that was bang for me. I mean, it was a mix between a great character and a way to talk of a big theme. And the big theme to me was the idea of images, and it's something that is deeply related to us today. I mean, you and I, we are images. We are more images than real person. We are on Facebook. You have your Twitter account. You probably share. I don't know if you do it, but everybody does. I mean, we share our images all around the world, and we sometimes we don't even experience a certain event. But the good thing is if we have the image of ourselves in that event, sometimes it's more important. I mean, being in I don't know, in Venice and capture my selfie, sometimes it's more important than being in Venice. Yeah. That's something really interesting. It's interesting how our society is evolving on images, and this was really a great theme for me. And this was the beginning. The Lewis Carroll, the Charles Dodgson era was exactly the beginning of this kind of revolution. I say the revolution of images.
Is that why you gave the character of Charles D the characteristic? You know, he's obsessed with those images, isn't he? You know, he covets the shop. Yeah. You know, is that sort of? I didn't think of it like that. It's really intelligent. You know, that idea of, you know, you are right. People take pictures just so they can say, "Look, I was here."
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's incredible. I didn't think of that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing more. He's obsessed not only by the idea of images, but you know what happens? Up until the half of the 18th century, there was a portrait. I mean, paintings. If I want to know you, I can only know you by a portrait, a painting. And this is a reproduction of reality. It's not reality. But all of a sudden, when the photograph stepped into our lives, which was a long process because it started in the 14th century, but then it finalizes in the 18th century, at that moment is reality on a piece of paper. So that event, that person really existed. By the way, the first photographers were shooting photographs of dead people.
Yeah, I've seen those images. They're actually quite frightening, aren't they? Yeah. They look so still.
Yeah.
Even though it's an image, I know that sounds bizarre, but they do have an unnaturalness about them.
Yeah.
There was quite a few English actors in the Imago,
yeah.
And obviously you're an Italian director based in Italy. Why is it that you chose an English cast? Well, not entirely English, but...
Well, there's a great cast. There's not only a cast.
They were very good.
No, the point was that Imago wasn't possible to be produced in Italy.
Right.
Um, Plus, we thought, with my producer, Eduardo, we thought, what are we going to do with this story? And I wanted to address to the widest possible audience. So that's why we start thinking about, let's turn it into English, and plus it's an English environment. It talks about that era. It talks about the Victorian era. It will be difficult on some parts, because, by the way, the language factor was very important on the stage play. When I wrote the stage play, I was deeply, let's say, influenced by the theater of absurd. So people like Ionesco or Beckett, and I gave to the characters a sort of invented language, but it was Italian, and it was completely absurd, and it was mixed with the idea of, you know, how the characters in Alice in Wonderland, they talk. It's great. It's fantastic. It's a completely invented language. So I did more or less the same, playing a little bit with that, and at the same time, I gave them a real language. So there were those two languages in the stage play, and when we had to transfer it into English, it was difficult to invent a language in English. So what we do, we try to give them two kind of languages. One was one is the languages of the Victorian era, which I like really much, really. I really love that language because it's a way of telling very bad things in a polite way. And on the other hand, when there's a process, I wish those characters to have a little funnier language, so more realistic, more real, more modern. So into the movie there are those two languages, but this was a process to transform a language. This was another transforming from stage to cinema, starting from a kind of language that was invented and was clearly influenced by the theater of absurd, and switching to something for cinema. I have to say that also we cut it off some scenes because there was too much of this reminiscence of the stage. It wasn't. It simply didn't work.
Right. Okay. Was it hard to lose some of those scenes then? Did you feel an attachment to them, or was it just for the good of the movie and they had to go?
I felt a strong attachment to every single scene that I shot, and my producer probably felt a strong attachment to every single money that we spent to shoot it. But when I first edited with the editor, the Imago was 2 hours and 10.
Wow. So you lost a fair bit.
Yeah, and then we went down to an hour and 45, but still I wasn't convinced. And then we had another editor jumping, external eye, and we found out the way to get it to the point. She's a great editor. Her name is Angelita. Angelita came in and told me, and I asked her, "Oh, I don't like that stuff. What should we cut off?" And she told me, "We don't need to understand what we have to cut off. We have to understand exactly what we need to stay in.
Right.
This is what is absolutely necessary." So that's how we worked out, and finally I have to say that no matter how, I'm very happy with the job. I'm very happy with the job that was done on the set. We had rehearsals with the actors. I think we had also a great atmosphere, which is a really important thing when you work with huge amount of people. I'm used to work with 4 people or with let's say 100 people, but the relationship that you establish with people that you follow path for 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year, it's really important. It's what really makes the project work. And everybody has to work at the maximum of his possibility, So the relationship and the environment is quite a key issue for me.
Right, okay. So just moving on to your next project.
Homewards is a huge project. We are working on that story, and we are probably shooting in, let's say, May 2016. It's an on-the-road movie.
Right.
And it's the story about a criminal who steals a car because he's escaping from a robbery, a bad robbery. He's a young criminal. He escapes from that robbery and he steals a car at the gas station. And the car is doing gas, and the owner of the car is a very old man. And when he sees that the car goes with the criminal, he's a very old man and he gets a stroke and he falls down. He gets a stroke because inside the car there is a young kid, the nephew of this man, and she is sleeping under a blanket. So basically this is the start, and the story is about the two characters, the criminal and the young girl. The young criminal, because he's actually 19, and the girl, which is 7, developing their relationship the more they get into the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Where did that idea come from? Did you...
The idea came from the fact that I spent 1.5 years of my life living in Central America.
Yeah.
I was working there for 1.5 years. Great time, but I used to live in the countryside. So I may say that when I used to live there with my family, my kids, and etc., the relationship I developed with the people there was so deep and so strong. I couldn't even imagine, really. And I was having those relationships with people that almost had nothing in their life, nothing, only trees around them, and the relationship was no need to exchange in any case on any kind of level favors,
Right.
just plain soul relationship, and that touched me a lot. But once a week I had to go for work on the capital. Now the capital, it's a very modern town, 3 million people stuck into skyscrapers and slums and the classical Central American. And what happens is that relationships there are really difficult. There's a lot of crime. And I watched this and I said, and I thought, as a society, we are failing. We are importing some models, and we are failing. We are failing there, but we are failing here too. I mean, let's think about the slums here. I don't know if you have that in England, but in France, for sure, the banlieue, or in Italy, first-generation immigrants, second-generation immigrants, they don't feel at home, for example, and the development that we have into our towns are bringing the level of relationship very, very low. On the other hand, if you go in the country and you live in the country, the level is a little bit better.
Yeah.
So where are we going? So the question is, where are we going? And that's mainly why we developed the story, to try to answer this question. This is what probably cinema is really different. I think cinema it's a way of speaking about, on a sense, you have to tell a story which has to be compelling, but at the same time you have the opportunity to talk about an entire world. You have to. It's somehow philosophy.
Yeah.
It's modern philosophy.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So cinema is modern philosophy for me.
It's a universal language, isn't it? You know, through the images, you can talk essentially to anyone or tell any story.
Yeah, yeah. It's not only a matter of universal language, but it's a matter that the more the globalization, it's also a globalization of language. It means that, let's say, 20 years ago, no, maybe more, before 68, I thought it was, when the jump cut was invented. The jump cut was something, I mean, in cinema, the jump cut was something completely, it was strange. Now everybody can read a jump cut.
Yeah.
Everyone in every part of the world, probably except the Aborigines in Australia, because maybe they haven't seen it, but probably they saw it, and they can understand that.
Yeah.
It's a language, it's a new language, and they can understand it. So what happens is that there is a global language that you can use. It's not only a spoken language, but a visual language that you can use, and you can work in cinema at so many levels, layers of significance. It means that everything is narration. So you can play with narration, with costumes, with what the actor does. You can play with the editing, and all in each single step, it's a layer of narration. And it doesn't matter. You're not obliged to talk only of one thing, but you can play with multiple layers and give a certain ultimate message. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent speaker.
Yeah.
Now we're going to move on now to the James Lipton portion of the interview. I've stolen it, but don't worry, he stole it from Bernard Pinois, so it's fine. We're going to start with, what is your favourite word?
Well, it's not an easy question, but my favorite word is probably, narration.
Narration.
Narration, because it's not a matter of job. It's a matter of life. The way you see the way I'm dressed, the way you are dressed, this is narration. This is narration. All is narration. Everything, it's something that covers every aspect of life. Narration is not a story. A story is a sequence of events. But narration, I mean, fashion, it's a perfect example, because fashion express somehow something about you to the people. The people reads it, and it's a fast way of communication. Hence is narration. Every human activity is narration. So I really feel that this is the key of life. I mean, it's really the minimum particle of life. Narration. Yeah, I believe it.
It's an excellent choice and very well defined. Least favourite word?
Yeah. Oh, fuck. The least favorite word probably is, let's say, that's harder than the first one. Probably, what I really don't like is when you define. It's like the example of a genre. It's like when you say yellow, or you say white, or you say black. The categorization, I don't like that. Categories, I don't like it.
Right.
I feel like I always felt like I had to understand which was the rule to break the rule.
Right.
It's not a matter only of rules. It's a matter of categories. The categories is fear. Categories is untrust. Categories, it's a way of simplifying too much. Categories means I don't know. It's really the worst thing I can imagine. Even if I can understand that in some cases are useful, but really I don't like it. Yeah.
And what is it that turns you on then?
Well, it's a big thing, but it's Okay, let's talk it like that. Let me talk a little bit about that. It's love.
Ah.
But it's not so simple. It's not a simple word because when you don't have something, you realize how much it was important. And being able to love everything around you, the people around you, yourself too, it's really a key thing in life. It's really what keeps you going, what keeps you curious about life. Another word that I don't like is routine. The routine keeps you less curious about everything. Routine is Beckett used to say that routine is what gives that what makes the sounds in life less important. Well, it's said in a different way, but anyway, the sense is that. So, love is what really turns me on. But if you can manage to wake up yourself and say, what I'm looking is great, it's so fantastic, it happens once in my life, it won't happen again. It's not always like that, of course, you cannot. But when it happens, that turns you on.
You're wonderful. Honestly, these are some of the best answers we've had. They're very, very deep. What turns you off?
You're making difficult.
No.
I don't know what turns me off.
If you want time to think about that one, we have a far simpler question, which is, what's your favourite swear word?
Fuck. I always say fuck.
I've been waiting for that one all festival. We've not had it yet. There we go. So what is it that turns you off then?
The what?
What is it that will turn you off a project or anything?
Probably is routine. Routine is a way of really. I really believe in that. I believe that creativity is not for creative people. Creativity is it's a right for everyone. What I mean with that is that even if you're in an industry doing the same job every day, and that's a really big routine, and it's the most challenging thing I could ever imagine. You have to find a way to use your creativity. It's hard. I really, well, there are billions of people that can do it. I don't mean that it's a bad job, but I feel sorry because this is the worst position to use creativity. Or think about people mining. How can you use your creativity and keep yourself alive? It's not an easy job, but it's always the same meaning. I mean, you have to use your creativity to keep you alive. Otherwise, you're dead. You're almost dead.
And is there a sound or noise you hate?
There is a sound I love, which is Pink Floyd music. It is
excellent choice.
No, I love the sound of. Well, I'm a father. I love the sound of my kids in the morning. They wake me up, and that's after I smash them in the face. But I love that sound. I love many sounds. I used to be a musician, so I love music. I love the sound of a guitar. I almost love every instrument. I like to hear sounds of different cultures. I love to walk in places and hear sounds that I've never heard before. That's what I love. For routine is not working with me.
And if there's any other profession that you could do, what would it be? Any other job in the world?
Well, it's quite easy because it still remains into the creative environment, and I may say that it's writing, but this is easier, I think. Probably once I was doing a job and I was doing that job and I was directing a company, an industry. And I had like more or less between 60 and 100 people working for me, and I have to manage their lives. It was really challenging and really satisfactory. So yeah, this would be because I had to better their life. At the same time, I need them to work so that the production was going. So it was a balance of the two, and that was challenging and interesting. Yeah, that was a good job.
Is there any job that you wouldn't do?
Given the fact that all the jobs are really, I'm really saying that, I'm really sincere, all jobs are interesting because until you have to learn, there's something to do. I love my job because I almost know that there's so much to understand, know, discover. But I want mine. I want mining is like well, the biggest condemnation possible in the world, I think.
Right.
You don't see the sun.
No.
Probably you can. No, it's something that I can't even think of.
Right. That's it. And if heaven exists, when
Yeah.
you get up there, what would you like God to say to you?
Given the fact that I don't believe in God, God.
I imagine it'd be a shock then.
Yeah, it would be a big shock. Simply, probably good job. Good job.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Very subtle. Emiliano, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
No worries. Now, are there any questions from the audience?
Yep.
I'm an actor in Manchester and London. What would your advice be to go and work in Europe and work in TV and theatre in Italy?
Well, go and work, you mean? I can't hear you very well. Work?
Yeah, to work as an actor in Europe.
My advice is don't come to Italy. No, I'm sincere. It's not just a joke. One thing is, if I was talking with my cast, and one thing is, if you want to do a work, if you really want to do it, you have to do it. That means that you have to do it constantly, on a daily basis, because the experience that you get is what makes you an actor. Otherwise, you're not. It's not how much you study. It's not how many casting you do. It's just do it. It's do it on every possible occasion. You have to do it, because if you really believe in that, you have to do that, and you have to do it every single fucking day. Every single fucking day, because that's your job. Otherwise you're not an actor. So, as an advice, find a group of people and do Shakespeare, do whatever you want, but do it. Play, write, or just jump on stage and do a solo, but do it. Do it in front of the people for free. Do it on the street. Do it wherever you want, but do it. Otherwise, you're not an actor. And you have to experience. The more you experience, the more you have two things. Occasion, and in life, you never know. Tomorrow, you never know. Somebody can you never know. It's real, you never know. You never know what happens tomorrow. So tomorrow you can find somebody that says, oh, look, that great actor. And on the second hand, you build your experience at a certain level that, as an actor, you need what we call in Italy is a sort of a basket full of experience. So you can use that experience for every possible role. So experience is the key. Do it as much as you can, for free, paid, in front of your girlfriend, wherever, but do it.
Cheers, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Hello.
I think I know you.
I'm curious. I've never asked you this before, but I'm hearing what you're saying about your opportunities for creativity. especially coming from a theatre background as I do and transitioning into film, where when we do a theatre production, right up until dress rehearsal, we have the opportunity to change and adjust every scene. The whole play is open to adjustment.
Yeah.
Whereas while we do a film, we lock in scenes. And so when we're halfway through a shoot, we've already locked in scenes which may not be in chronological order. Often they aren't. We've locked in scenes from different parts of the film.
Yeah.
And do you feel like your opportunities for creativity are being diminished because you have to fit things in to what's already been shot,
Yeah.
unless you go back and reshoot something?
No, it's a big challenge, and I faced it, by the way, in Imago. The ability of course, I won't say that in front of my producer, but when you have a certain script and you are beginning to shoot, it can happen that you have to change. You may have to change because of the actor, because of somebody. Creativity, you know, creativity, especially in an environment with so many people, is not one way only. I mean, it's not me telling people, you have to do that, and shut up. It's not like that. It's common creativity, and I believe in that. And that means that we can sit down and talk about what can be changed up until the day before shooting, but even during the shooting, in every single scene. Because the minimum essence of cinema is the scene. Of course, is not the scene, is the shooting. Every single shooting has a space for creativity. Every single moment has a space for creativity within a certain frame, of course.
It diminishes as you go along, does it not?
Yeah, but even as you go along, there is a space for creativity, always. Always, because you can discover on a scene a certain aspect that you didn't consider before. And you are considering that because that exact morning, the actor waked up and said, I thought something this night. Couldn't we change this? Or could I say this word on a different meaning? Or for me, this scene can be seen a different way. That's exactly what I did, because the final scene of Imago wasn't written like that. The final idea of Imago wasn't written like that. And I stepped on and I jumped. I literally jumped, bumped into a photograph. And was a photograph of Manuela and Doug. And I thought, we should change the final. And it was like, we were already shooting, we've been already shooting for 4 weeks, so it was last week of shooting. So I completely changed the final. So there is space for creativity, yeah, always, till the last minute, till the last editing point. I edited 3 times this movie. It's a matter of creativity, and there are 2 key issues. When you get an inspiration, and it's like heaven when it happens. Don't, you remember my worst word?
Yes.
Okay. Don't fuck up with that. You have to respect it. And I learned it. It's one thing that I learned. You have to respect the inspiration. So if you had an image, and that was what moved you to the project, you have to respect it since the beginning. That doesn't mean that it's not open to the creativity of other people. You have to get other people and work with them in a correct environment. Of course, there must be respect of each and every skills, okay? But apart from that, you need to have new injections of possibilities that you wouldn't see otherwise, because you're too into the idea. And if you're open to listen, there may be something, there may be, and often it happens, there may be something that it's bettering what you are trying to say. And you still maintain what you're trying to say. It's not...
Did you have any situations, though, where you had an idea and you couldn't follow through with it because you were working in film and,
of course.
And we were locked in?
Of course. Not because of the locking, because of what I learned, and this is real. All the projects that I did up until a certain point was like, okay, I can't do that because I don't have enough money. Simple. I don't have enough money. Okay, let's do it less. Error. Okay, I can't do it because this actor cannot reach that point, that level. Okay, let's go. Okay, go on. Error 2. You're fucking up with the inspiration. You don't have money. Okay, find it another way. Move it, switch it a little bit. But you have to say that thing. It's that thing that moved you. You cannot fuck up with that. And the actor is not working on that. Talk with him. Try to find a way with him and try to explain. Actors are extremely creative people that they just want to do their job. And if you can help them doing their job the best possible way, that's the way I learned to keep the inspiration. That's very important.
Any more questions from the audience?
I talk too much.
No, you were wonderful. Let's all give him a round of applause.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.